We are, of course, here for the fifth National General Council of the African National Congress. And again, as pointed out earlier in my conversation with Samkele Maseko, it's going to be an interesting one for the African National Congress. A midterm review, yes, it's a time to track just where the ANC finds itself. Is it on track in terms of the policies that it adopted in its last conference? Have they veered off track? What is working? What is not working? All of those issues need to be discussed. And of course, I'm joined now by SABC Politics Editor Mzwandile Mbeje, as well as the SABC's specialist correspondent, Sophie Mokoena. And always good to have you guys, especially at a time like this, because this is, of course, where the institutional memory for us as the SABC rests. So here we are now. And the big question for the ANC is, of course, around the continued leadership of the NDR, the National Democratic Revolution, and whether the ANC is actually in a position to continue leading the NDR in the absence of serious organizational renewal, whether that be ideologically, ethically, or just generally. And Mzwai, let me start with you.
Well, thank you very much, Sakina, and morning, Sophie, and the viewers. It is actually very interesting. We have been hearing about the NDR for the longest of times. And at the time when the ANC was strongest, you'd recall that at some point, this is a party which once achieved an easy two-thirds majority, so which basically placed it at the center of being able to drive the agenda it wanted. And then it started dropping, but still with very massive majorities, so which basically told you that you could still be able to marshal and implement those resolutions you have taken. We are at a point electorally, Sakina, where the ANC in the 30 years of democracy is at its weakest from the electoral point of view. And then you are speaking about the NDR. There was an opportunity where you were strongest, where you could have pushed it. What stopped you? There was a point where the alliance was united. You couldn't do it. You are at a point where it's fracturing in front of your very own eyes. The SACP, one of your key allies, have said, we are going it alone. You have tried to persuade them, they have said no. You as a party are meeting at a time when there is so much even happening in the country, which sometimes calls into question the kind of the leadership in some of the key areas. There's Madlanga Commission, there's ad hoc commission. So there's basically a myriad of issues and challenges. So as the ANC, you want to lead the NDR. As a party yourself, are you well equipped within yourself to do it? That is the key question.
And that's about the organizational renewal, which will be a key discussion point here at the NGC, Sophie. But without organizational renewal that actually is meaningful, what would that mean for the ANC?
I think it will be a very tragic moment if the ANC was not going to engage in an honest, robust introspection. The first NGC in Port Elizabeth in the year 2000, the ANC was very robust. It even came up with a resolution identifying its weaknesses and the challenges that were crippling in as it relates to leadership and membership, came with a resolution that there must be a new cadre. In other words, you must ensure that your members, your leadership, are of a particular breed. You would recall coining a new cadre. It is because the ANC had realized at that time that something was happening in the structures of the movement at the branch level, the regional level, the provincial level, up to the national level, where you have members of members coming in with interest, personal interest and personal enrichment. And then it went to another NGC where failure to implement what you picked up as early as 2000 crept in and became a norm. The NGC in Pretoria, when it was supposed to focus on the task at hand, it focused on the leadership, and it became a one-way traffic to date. When you look at the organizational report, at the conference in Polokwane, both the secretary's report, the Secretary General Kgalema Mtlanti and the then President Thabo Mbeki's report, they were very robust. But what happened? They didn't discuss those reports. And it was a continuous now hijacking of the movement, if one were to say it, in terms of people with personal interest. Now, having realized, or if you do proper introspection, you look back, you trace back where you veered off the road, ANC can still build itself. Clearly, it will be a question of few, but better. It can't be as big as it used to be. And to have that quality small ANC, while we are strengthening the party, renewing the party, you have to, at this NGC, be honest and upfront in terms of where did you go wrong. And taking into consideration that the electorate gave you a warning last year by giving you 40%. Above all, people who often vote for the ANC stayed away. They didn't vote. Let's look at people who didn't participate in elections last year. It's a large number of South Africans. It means they still believe there's no alternative. But the vehicle that we are used to, that we like, has veered off the road. The ANC must do that introspection.
And it's an interesting one, Mzwai, because if you look at the ethical renewal that Sophie speaks to about what's happening at branch level, again, we are seeing regional conferences taking place, and the buzzword once more is money and the capturing of branches, which is something, as Sophie points out, was already identified back at the first NGC in 2000. But of course, the ANC, for whatever reason, has been unable or incapable of dealing with that sort of internal capture.
I think it also is perpetuated by these things of factions. Because you look at conferences as well and look at the kind of leadership that gets elected, that emerges out of them. You would see people on a particular slate who you think may be very capable, but they get left out. And then you just try and analyze, so how come did this leadership emerge? You realize that this leadership was of a particular slate. Versus, so now that begs the question. So if you as branches, if you as the ANC are interested in the quality of the organization, so it shouldn't be more about the individuals. But back to your point, so what then influences someone to elect myself over Sakina, despite that Sakina is actually well equipped? That is the question of perhaps part of it, money that tends to change hands, and it really the ANC has to get to the bottom of how to regulate this. We know you cannot wish it away completely, but have a way of dealing with how campaigns are run.
Let me ask a direct question. Is the ANC capable of reversing that trend? And I'm going to ask that to both of you. Sophie?
Yes, it can reverse the trend if the ANC membership is honest in terms of where did we go wrong as members of the ANC. They have to say that to
Which
themselves.
membership?
If they don't do that, there is no turning back. They have to be honest, Sakina. They have to understand that it's not business as usual. The sins of the incumbents, they must really address that. Because if they don't, if it's still a smash and grab, we want to amass wealth, we want to enrich ourselves, it's not about ordinary people. What the movement, when it was launched, stands for, they are not going to recover.
But
they
how does the movement assess, which cadres are here for the right reasons and which are not? Because if you go back to that inaugural NGC, one of the key issues there was also about political education for the cadres. But where's that brought them?
I think here is the bigger problem for me, for the ANC. They have refused to, in inverted commas, modernize. You cannot expect to implement the tactics of the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s in today's modern world. So you've got to adapt and adjust. The fact of the matter is that, Sakina, money is an issue. So find a way of how to deal with issues that relate to resources. The fact that sometimes in some councillors you'll find the councillors killing themselves is not because they just hate each other, but it's about resources so that one is stopping the other from getting to that particular position. So in their assessments, they have to look at how do we do it differently. Yes, tradition is always good, but tradition needs to somehow evolve. You must be able to adapt to modern tactics, modern ways of doing things. Because if you are stuck in the olden days and then the new tendencies creep in, they will cripple you. That is what we are seeing happening. They must accept that money is an issue, and then how do we then overhaul the system of electing the leadership? I mean, it happens in other countries. I mean, one of the countries that they idealize so much, which is China, look at how they control their things. It doesn't mean that there's no money there. There is money there, but how do you put systems that will be able to control that? Once there is that political will, Sakina and Sophie, they will be able to somehow make some progress. But if it's about me, and me, it shall always be like this.
And to that point, of course, the electorate itself has changed over time, Sophie. So to Mzwai's point, it can't be business as usual. You've got to adapt with the times.
You are correct, but I think the ANC has got institutional memory within itself. It has got veterans who have led the organization during difficult time, during struggle, who are still alive, who became leaders post-1994. It has got young leaders who grew up in the ANC since 1994, who have attended all the conferences, all the NGCs, all the policy conferences. With that kind of knowledge, they can still go back and say, but where did we go wrong? And how do we go back?
Do those strategies and tactics speak to the current electorate, the young people who are going to the ballot next year?
The strategy and tactic always gets adopted and adapted as it depends on a particular era and a moment. The ANC strategy and tactic document, it's not static. They always make changes depending on challenges of that time. And therefore, you have, as I pointed out, the leaders within the ANC and the members within the ANC who are much younger, but fortunately, they have been exposed to the before 1994 leaders, 1994, post-1994 leadership, and being in government. And therefore, those members of the ANC with such institutional memory who were exposed to different layers of leadership at different times, who are the people that we are talking about, are the ones who are supposed to say, for this to be relevant, this is what we need to do. But taking the interest of the people.
Time is up.
First.
You've got 10 seconds.
The quick thing as well. The fact of the matter is that the ANC is enjoying state power right now. One of the things that it needs to be able to do is to use the mandate to be able to bring services to the people. Because one of the things that has made ANC lose credibility in the eyes of the people is that they don't deliver, they are engaged in corruption. Once you are able to reverse some of those issues, people may start believing again.
And that, of course, speaks to the ethical renewal along with the ideological and organizational renewal that the African National Congress is expected to spotlight here at the 5th NGC.